Hi beauties, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be discussing something super exciting for me, and they are eyeshadow palettes. For those of you who have been following me for quite some time, you guys know how crazy I am about the formula, the packaging, you know, the finishes of eyeshadows, and just the presentation overall. So from all the eyeshadow palettes that I own, from all the eyeshadow palettes that I have swatched, tested at home, in store, that I have given away, that I have, you know, played around with this whole year, I kind of narrowed it down and selected the top 5 eyeshadow palettes that I feel like have great quality, that are really like multi-purpose, that are more like everyday type of palettes. And I actually did exclude all the like rainbow eyeshadow palettes that have came out this year, just because I might actually do like a rainbow eyeshadow palette video for 2017 as well. But these are palettes that if I was to go on a trip, if I was to, you know, go on a deserted island, and these are the palettes that I could actually, you know, bring with me and select, these 5 would be it. They are just absolutely phenomenal in texture and color and the selection of shadows. There isn't any like repeated shadows. Every single shadow has like a purpose. And so these are the top 5 palettes for 2017. I actually did one of these videos last year as well. And so let's go ahead and jump into the video. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go from my most favorite, loved, used palette to my kind of least favorite palette, but they're still all my favorites, so I can't really say that like, oh, you know, the last one is not good, because it's still gonna be one of my favorites in general. So the first eyeshadow palette I'm going to be talking about is the Marc Jacobs eyeshadow palette. This is the Scandalous 740, and this is what the actual palette looks like. These are the shadows, and this is definitely my favorite palette of this year. I know he has came out with, you know, so many different variations of these palettes, but the quality of the shadows is absolutely remarkable. I feel like even though there's only 7 shades in this palette, I do truly believe that every single shadow has a purpose in this palette. I can create so many different looks, from more neutral ones to actual, you know, like accented ones, to more glittery ones, because of this like copper shade that actually reminds me of, I believe, Flamethrower from Makeup Geek, from one of my favorite like actual shadows that are individually sold. I absolutely adore this palette. And I've actually swatched pretty much every single one of these palettes. All the shadows are super creamy, super consistent, super pigmented, and I absolutely just adore it. This is my favorite like color scheme, because these are like my type of colors. It has a beautiful shimmer, beautiful like in the crease color, beautiful mattes that are more neutral. It has this beautiful burgundy pop of color. This is actually the shadow palette that I am wearing today on my eyes, and I just absolutely love this palette. I feel like it's pretty pricey, but it's worth every single dollar, because I feel like anyone can, you know, put this palette to use, from beginners to very advanced makeup artists. Just the quality of the shadows is definitely spectacular. So my second favorite eyeshadow palette for 2017 is going to go to the brand Viseart. This is a relatively newer addition to my collection, but I've still had it for many weeks, and I've gotten to play around with it plenty to know how amazing the shadows are. This is the packaging. It's extremely slick. Viseart is definitely, or Viseart, or however you pronounce it, is definitely a brand of eyeshadows that are extremely pigmented. Both the mattes and the shimmers, but mattes specifically are extremely buttery, extremely creamy, and definitely one of the best formulas out in the market for matte shadows. And so this is the palette. I feel like this is another palette that is very concentrated, but it's very like focused on purpose. Like you have every single shade that you might possibly need, from the darkest, blackest, mattest black to just all over the lid kind of setting shade, to a very nice kind of shimmer in the inner corner, to a couple pops of color from like this super flamey orange to like a more plummy purple, and you have this really nice gun metallic for a smokier eye. Then you have red, which is like an accent color, and a regular chocolate matte brown that is, you know, such a great formula, and I absolutely love this palette. From the moment that I saw it online, I had a feeling I would absolutely love this palette. I have quite a few of their little theory palettes that are really great quality but aren't as pricey as some of their, you know, like full matte palettes and full shimmer palettes. And so I absolutely adore this palette. This is definitely my second favorite. So if I had to, you know, pick only two, these are the two that I would pick for this year. Okay, moving on, my third favorite palette for this year is going to be the Jaclyn Hill and Morphe palette. I am a person that is not like, and hasn't been really into the whole like Morphe eyeshadow palettes. I feel like they have a lot of great shimmers, but some of their mattes are really hit and miss. And so when this palette came out, I really wanted to get my hands on it just because, you know, I have been a fan of Jaclyn Hill from a long time ago. She is definitely one of the more inspiring, you know, makeup YouTubers here on YouTube. And so I really wanted to see like what kind of palette she created. And so this is what the palette looks like on the inside. I feel like it's such a great selection of color and variety, and I feel like you have everything you need for any type of occasion, from a wedding to a party to, you know, a vacation. Anything you need is pretty much in this palette. And one of the other reasons I kind of think I like this palette so much, besides the quality being so much more consistent than most of the other like Morphe palettes, is the fact that like I have a really similar kind of scheme of a palette that I created myself that I've been using for years and years and years. And this is kind of what my, you know, homemade eyeshadow palette looks like. And I feel like a lot of the shades in between these two palettes are really similar. And I feel like she created a lot of very good quality shades in this palette that are really similar to the shades and color schemes that I love to use. So I have been absolutely loving this palette. I do feel like the quality is better, like I just said. And I just really adore, you know, every single color in this palette. I feel like you have a little bit more of like the fun pops of color. You have a lot of really nice neutrals that are lighter. You have a lot of really nice warm shades and tones, and then you have, you know, your blackest black, your lightest light colors. And so I just adore this palette overall. Plus, it's a pretty affordable palette as well. And so it's definitely one of my favorites this year just because it has such a great variety of colors and shades, shimmers, mattes, satin finish shades, and I just really adore this palette in general. Alright, so my fourth favorite palette for 2017 is also another like bigger palette, and it's the Lorac MEGA 4 palette. This actually came out for the holidays like a couple months ago, and I really do adore the selection of shadows. I'm a huge fan of the Lorac Unzipped palettes. Those are some of my holy grails. I'm sure some of you guys already know that. I haven't always been a fan of the holiday, you know, Lorac MEGA Pro palettes, just because the color schemes are a little bit too simple. They're too similar. Sometimes, you know, they just don't excite me enough. But this one, this year for 2017, I feel like it does have a lot of variation from your, you know, super unique different shades. These two rows are matte, these two rows are more shimmer and satin finish, and I just really like the variety of the shades. The formula is really pigmented, really buttery and creamy, and I just really adore, you know, the amount of the looks and the variety in this palette. And you definitely have a lot of really interesting, unique colors like this denim blue right here, this peacock, shimmery blue. You have this green one that's called moss. That's a very kind of really fun, light green of a shade. You have a fairy tale, which is more of like a plum purple shade. And for this palette, I do think it's a really interesting like coordination of colors, and the way they're placed and put together really kind of, you know, sparks my interest and forces me to go out of my comfort zone a little bit, because, you know, I do have these fun pops of color to play around with, but you can definitely create a more of a natural everyday type of look as well with these lighter shades. And with this palette, the same as the Marc Jacobs palette, I feel like every shadow, every color has its own purpose, has its own like personality. And I just really like this palette for the color selections. Alright, now for my grand finale for my 5th favorite eyeshadow palette for the year of 2017 goes to Natasha De Nona and the Sunset palette. I have been a huge fan of Natasha De Nona's shadows, the quality, the pigmentation, her crystal shadows, her pearl shadows. Just all the shadows that she comes out with are just phenomenal quality. I feel like she definitely gets the mattes right as well. And I was really torn between the Lila palette and the actual Sunset palette. And as much as I love and adore, you know, the purple, the lavenders, the pinks, the mauves as a color scheme in a palette, for me, this one was definitely more wearable. Even though you do have like the neon yellows, I feel like they're a little bit more workable. And this palette also has a few more mattes than the Lila palette, and that kind of was the thing that won me over, because I think mattes are a little bit harder to make good quality than shimmers. And so this is my number 5 winner for this year. I just absolutely adore like all her crystal shadows, all the mattes. They're just so creamy, so buttery, so easily blendable. I feel like even though this is more of like a pricier palette, if I had to grab one to go, you know, this would be one of my choices for my top eyeshadow palettes for this year. I feel like it's really cute because the packaging is just so adorable and small, compacted, kind of sturdy as well. And these shadows, even though they are in a palette, they are magnetic, so you can easily, you know, pop them out and put them in a Z palette. Or I was actually thinking of taking out some of the ones I don't really use a lot and switching them out between different palettes. And so I might be doing that video pretty shortly here. But I just absolutely adore her shadows. She's an amazing makeup artist. And she is definitely inspiring and someone I look up to in the makeup and beauty community. And so that'd be it, you guys. Those are my top favorite 5 picks for eyeshadow palettes for this year. This actually took me quite some time to kind of narrow down and really think about, you know, the eyeshadow palettes that I would get most use out of, that are extremely good quality, that are consistent in the pigmentation and formula, and that I would, you know, just kind of grab on the go, especially now with me wanting to declutter palettes. These 5 are definitely ones that I would keep and leave in my collection. And so I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys have any eyeshadow palette favorites from this year or in general, like holy grails, do let me know in the comments down below, because I would love to know. And I will also mention that I have a giveaway going on right now that I will go ahead and link down below as well. And so I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Lots of love from me to you. Stay happy, stay positive, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Lots of love. Bye. Mwah.